In this lesson, we'll take a closer look at the modifier stack and how that works in 3ds Max. Alright, so let's go ahead and drop in a cylinder to begin with. And we'll just do a simple cylinder. Let's go to the Modify panel, and we can change the number of height segments. So give it a few more height segments. Hit Z to zoom extents on that, and we can orbit around it. Okay, so here's our cylinder. You can see that we have the cylinder listed here in our modifier stack, and it's not much of a stack right now because the only thing in there is the actual cylinder itself. So now we can start to add modifiers from our modifier list. We also have the modifiers located over here in different categories. So if we open up our modifier list, you can see that we have world space modifiers and then we have object space modifiers, and so we'll concentrate on these for now. Okay. And so we have a number of different types of modifiers that you can use, and it'll just take a little bit of time and experience to go through and use these modifiers. As you go through the process of modeling and so forth, we'll use a variety of these modifiers as well. And so we'll get a little bit of experience with some of these. Here we've got some deformers that we can use, and then we've got some other deformers that we'll go ahead and add as well. Let's start by adding just a simple bend. So you can see as we've added that bend deformer, it's now on top of, in the stack, this cylinder. We can still select the cylinder, and we can still get the parameters and change the parameters for that particular cylinder, but now we have a bend modifier above it in the stack. So just think of the stack as Max going through from bottom to top and applying the different modifiers to our geometry. So in this case, it starts with the cylinder. We look at the number of all of the parameters basically for our cylinder, evaluate those. Then we move up the stack into the bend and evaluate this. And so we can go ahead and change the bend angle here. And so that's now applied to the cylinder. Now if I go back down to the cylinder, I can still change any of those values, and you can see how those changes are propagated up through the stack. Okay, so think of the result as coming from the top of the stack. Now, if we'd like to not see the influence of this particular modifier, we can go ahead and hit the little light bulb, and you can still see the modifier, but now the influence of that is negated, so we aren't seeing the actual bending happen. You can go ahead and turn that back on. Now, if you're not seeing it when you select the cylinder, you can see that we still see the bent cylinder. If you turn off this Show End Result toggle, you can see that as we select the bottom of the stack, only that level is visible here. So we're only seeing what's happening here at this level of the stack. If we select the bend, you can now see that the bend has been applied, but if we go ahead and select the cylinder, we can't see that. If we choose to Show End Result, then that'll show the result of the stack no matter what we have selected. So just keep that in mind to make sure and check that toggle right there so that you're able to see the result that you're looking at. And you can also turn that off and on. There's a little plus next to this particular modifier, so we can access the gizmo in the center, and a lot of your modifiers will have those things there. If you'd like to delete the modifier, you can go ahead and hit this little garbage can here. And so we get rid of that. You can see that whatever was happening within that modifier is now gone. So we don't see that anymore, and all of its influence has been removed. Okay, we're back to where we started from. If we add that bend back into the stack, and again add an angle to that. If we'd like to get rid of this modifier but we want to keep the deformation on this, okay, we can go ahead and right click on our modifier and we want to collapse all, and we can what's known as collapsing the stack. And so now this collapses everything down. You can see that visually it looks the same, but we don't have our cylinder primitive anymore, and we don't have the bend deformer modifier anymore. All we have is this editable mesh. Okay, so this basically bakes down everything in the stack into an editable mesh, and we can access the sub-objects, but we can't access any of those parameters that we had before. So just keep that in mind. Okay, and so let's take a look at adding multiple modifiers here. So we'll go ahead and again draw out a cylinder. And let's go to the modifier stack here. And we'll start to add some modifiers. So we can add a bend modifier. We can change that angle. We can now start to add additional modifiers here. So maybe we can add a a twist modifier. Can change that. And maybe add a taper modifier and modify that. And so taking a look at this, if we go ahead and turn these off in order, it's taking the cylinder, it's applying the bend first, then it's applying the twist, and then it's applying the taper and showing us the end result. Okay, so it's going from bottom to top. We'll get a different result if we move these around a bit. So if we take the taper and move it down right above the cylinder, you can see that now it's going to taper that first, then it's going to bend it, and then it's going to twist it. Okay, if we take the twist and move it down maybe right above the cylinder, now we get a different result too. So it's going to twist it first, then it's going to taper that result, and then it's going to bend that result. So it's really important to understand that the order in which you have your modifiers is really going to make an impact on the end result that you see. So the end result that we get with this combination is going to be different than the end result that we would get with another combination of the same modifiers. So just keep that in mind. Understand that the order goes from the bottom of the stack up through to the top of the stack to get our final result. Okay? And so working with 3ds Max, as you go through learning more and more about 3ds Max, you're going to be using the modifier stack a lot and using it really to your advantage. You know, it really gives you a lot of flexibility because you can create, you know, the object that you want to build. You can create that here with a modifier stack, and so we can create this complex object, but we still have all the control of going back into our cylinder and saying, you know what, I've got all these modifications made to my shape, but I really just want it to be a little bit lower resolution. Well, I can go back in and actually change the primitive shape without changing and without hurting the actual end result. I can go ahead and modify the twist, you know, without modifying, you know, still within that bend. So I can give it a little bit more of a twist. If you have these changes baked into your geometry, it's going to be much more difficult to go ahead and tweak those changes. So the modifier stack is a really powerful part of 3ds Max and something you really want to get in and get your hands dirty playing with. Okay? So now that we've taken a look at the modifier stack, let's go ahead next and take a look at saving files, working with incremental saves, and then go on to working with projects before we jump into creating some models. So let's go ahead and do that in the next lesson.